YouTube, we're back. And today I wanted to talk about an emergency savings. So, we've talked on my previous videos about budgeting, we've talked about high yield accounts. Today I want to kind of combine all of that together for one final video here when it comes to these budgeting practices with accounts that generate income and interest for us, and put that all together in talking about an emergency savings fund of some sort. So, unfortunately, at some point, I've talked about this in the past, we will be hit with some form of emergency in some case. And that could be a multitude of things, whether it's health related, something with family, friends, maybe you need to help out, someone wants to ask for borrowing some money. Maybe it's something entirely different, like losing your job and needing to figure out something quickly, scrambling to have some money to pay for your mortgage or your rent. Maybe it's something a little bit smaller than that, like your car decides to break down and something's wrong with it. You were not anticipating spending this money, and all of a sudden, now you're on the hook for whatever it is, a couple hundred, maybe a couple $1,000s. The challenging thing is a lot of people in this country do not have adequate money to afford some extenuating circumstance of an emergency. And that is where I would like to chat about my budget and show you what I'm working with every month, so I can explain how I break down everything and where I put that money and how I start saving against it so I can plan for any unseen emergency that comes to me at some point, which unfortunately, like I said, it will happen to all of us at some point. So with that, let's jump right in. All right, so in a future video, I'm going to talk about what I call the three buckets, which is where I ideally like to put my money in one of three different buckets. But for now, for the purposes of this simple video, I am just going to talk about one of the buckets in my high yield savings account, which I have talked about in previous videos. But I've also talked about budgeting, so I figured I would put my money where my mouth is and actually show a budget that I use here. So this is a Google sheet that I write down all of my budgeting expenses and my income as well. This is a sheet that you can get online. I'll link it in the description of this video. So if you want to get something like this or this exactly, you can jump on the link, and all you have to do is plug in your own your numbers so you can see exactly what you're working with here. So stepping through this here, if I make around $3,000 per month in my income, and then I write out all of my expenses here, it will automatically, in this little graph here, show me what I'm able to save and what I am spending for all of my different expenses, whether that be my mortgage, my HOA, utilities, subscriptions, etc. So we can see in this example here that I am able to save 27% of my income technically. And I can change some of these numbers to see if I want to save a little bit more or if I want to spend a little more. I can change those and see how the numbers reflect differently based on if I want to spend less on food or spend a little more on savings. I'll show you what that looks like in an example in 1 second. The most important thing I wanted to talk about today is this little emergency fund right here. So they give you the option, which is pretty cool here, to change how many months of an emergency savings that you would like to have. So if I go 3 months, you'll see this number change. I've been trying to have a 6-month emergency just in case. It's a, kind of a uncertain world out there. And so anything can happen at any point. I try and be proactive about that. And so I think, okay, if I were to lose my job or something happened there, I would like to have some sort of savings to fall back on, in this case, 6 months worth. And that would, with how much I make and what my expenses are, it calculates here that I need to save $13,000 if I want to cover all of my expenses for 6 months. And that will take me a little bit to save that amount of money. And so this is where it gets kind of interesting with this, is that I can start to tweak these numbers a little bit to get this number of my 6 month savings a little bit lower. So let's say it's more possible for me with saving that 27%, which if I'd like to save, a couple $100 a month, it looks like I'm saving, or I'm spending about 72%, almost 73 of my income on all of my expenses. So I have 27% left every month to do with what I want. Spend it, save it, whatever that looks like. So if I want to save a couple $100 every month and I want to add to this emergency savings and try and get that, maybe 13,000 is too much for me. Maybe I want to, save a couple $100 a month and get to maybe five to $10,000 is as much as I can save. I'm going to tweak these numbers here. So maybe I don't go eat out anymore. So if I change that to 0, you see the graph changes drastically. Now I only have to save $11,000 to hit this 6 months of emergency. Maybe $400 per month on food is a little bit more than I want to spend as well. So maybe I'll try and only spend, let's say, $300 per month on food. And you see the numbers continue to drop a little bit more. Now only $11,076 for 6 months. If there's anything I can try and reduce in my subscriptions, I talked about that in my previous video as well, then I will try and remove some of those here as well. I'm paying for a Best Buy account I don't want anymore, or I have 5 different streaming services and I want to cancel some of those. That will help continue to reduce this number as well. So another option too is, let's say 6 months is just impossible to reach. That's too much for me to try and save. I could also see what 3 months of an emergency fund would look like. $5,000, okay, or $5,500. That seems a little bit more feasible for me. I bet you over the next couple months, if I'm diligent and I save and be very proactive about it, I could save up $5,000 in case of an emergency. That way I have 3 months to cover all of my expenses and not be stressed about it. And I have that 3 months to know I'm covered while I try and figure out whether I need to get another job or whatever that looks like in that particular situation. So I love having this expense sheet in front of my face that I can tweak and adjust and look at different numbers. That helps me tremendously. So I know exactly what I'm looking at and how much I can spend or save for my emergency savings. And that's all I wanted to cover to wrap up this series of budgeting, where I put some of my money for an emergency in that high yield savings account that is going to generate a little bit of interest for me rather than just sitting in my checking account doing nothing. And that way I know I can continue to save a little bit into that high yield account. Once I have the money that I'm comfortable with in that account, I don't have to save any more in there. I'm done, and I can start saving elsewhere, or I can use that money that I was saving and spend it on something I like, going out for food or whatever that looks like. So I hope this video helped you. I'm going to jump into some more complex topics moving forward, but I wanted to at least touch on the very basics first with budgeting and moving your money into an account that isn't just a checking or a savings account doing nothing for you.